What you're about to hear is not rumor, not tabloid, not theory. It's a newly unsealed portion of an ongoing federal investigation into Sean Diddy Combs. And this time, it's a name no one expected to hear. Until now, Robin Rihanna. Fenty had never been tied to this case. No leaks, no whispers, not a single sentence in any document, until day 9 of the trial. Then came a sealed deposition, a handwritten letter, recovered, and one sentence whispered in open court, needs new. She saw the list. The room froze. The judge demanded order. The prosecution approached the bench, and the entire gallery leaned forward, as if even the walls had been holding their breath. The clerk's voice was steady but slow. Ms. Fenty submitted deposition, dated June 3, 2023, reviewed in chambers, admitted into evidence. She wasn't. There in person, her legal team had arranged a written statement, sealed, notarized, heavily redacted in places, but its core was untouched. Judge, counsel, proceed. The prosecutor stood, and with that, Exhibit 19A was entered, a scanned, handwritten letter. It was found in a long-forgotten management archive from Rihanna's early career. The date, March 28, 2009. Just weeks after a highly publicized personal trauma. The heading at the top, I said no. He didn't like that. The courtroom turned to stone. I was told it was just a party, Rihanna wrote, an after-hours gathering for artists and industry heads. I was invited by someone I trusted. I didn't ask questions, but I should have. She described arriving at the location, a private compound near Encino, around 12:40 a.m., accompanied by a stylist and a junior rep. At the gate, phones were taken. Entry required signatures. One paper was labeled Guest Clearance Confirmation. I remember the woman who greeted me. She wrote, she wore gloves. The room smelled like perfume and bleach. No cameras, just music, red lighting, eyes, everywhere. No one in the gallery moved. Rihanna's statement described being ushered into a room that didn't match the rest of the house. It was dim, cold, no furniture, only people standing, silently, waiting for something. There was a clipboard, she wrote. I glanced at it. There were names on it. First names. Some had stars next to them. My name was third on the list. I hadn't signed it. Then came the arrival. A man, unnamed in the letter, walked in minutes later. He smiled, shook hands, and then said, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do, but if you leave now, you don't come back. That's when she left. I turned to the woman who brought me, she wrote, and I said, we're leaving, now. She didn't argue, she just nodded. And then, silence. No press statement, no tweets, no interviews, not a word. Until now, the prosecutor paused, then continued reading from the deposition. I never said his name, Rihanna had written, but everyone knew whose house it was. That night stayed with me. I told my manager what I saw. His only response? Then don't talk about it. Then came the final paragraph, the one the courtroom would never forget. It was read aloud, word for word. Years later, I saw another girl's name on that list. She didn't leave, and now she's gone. I wish I had taken the list with me, but I didn't. I just took the fear. The judge called for recess, but the prosecutor raised one final line before the court adjourned. We submit this not to accuse, but to confirm what the industry has long denied. She knew, she saw it, and she ran. The courtroom returned from recess with a chill still lingering in the air. No murmurs, no flashes, just papers shuffling, and the echo of heels on polished floors as the prosecutor stepped forward once again. We now move, they said, to the secondary affidavit submitted in support of Ms. Fenty's original deposition, dated April 14, 2023. But this time, the voice wasn't Rihanna's. It was from someone behind the scenes, a former assistant, redacted in court records. Identified only as AR, she had worked closely with Rihanna from 2008 to 2012, first in wardrobe coordination, then briefly in personal travel and logistics. Her affidavit opened with one devastating line. I gave her the invitation. I've never forgiven myself. Exhibit 19B was then presented, a scanned invite dated from 2009. It was the original Chintuan Sign event invitation, described only as a creative energy reset hosted by S. Combs. No logos, no branding, just embossed initials. And one signature line AR explained, "I didn't know what it was. I was handed the envelope by someone at Bad Boy's media office. They said, 'Give it to Robin, personally.' They told me it was a music salon, a safe space for artists to unwind and connect. But what came next changed everything. When she came back from that night," AR wrote, "she wasn't the same. She was quiet, on edge. She asked me to tell the press she was sick. The next day, she wouldn't even look me in the eye. And then, silence. That silence lasted 5 years, until 2014. By then, Rihanna was building her empire. The first wave of Fenty collabs had launched. She was moving into high fashion, big partnerships, bigger pressure. That's when the email came in. No subject line, no sender she recognized. Just one sentence. "We remember everything, don't rewrite history. You were there." Attached was a photograph, not of Rihanna, but of the clipboard. From that 2009 event, the same clipboard she described in her letter, Exhibit 19C, sealed by the court, confirmed the photo's authenticity. All names blurred, except one, Fenty. Panic set in. AR forwarded the email to Rihanna's team. Legal advised her to ignore it, but she didn't. Instead, she went to her storage box, a personal archive, and opened an old notebook. Inside was a journal entry Rihanna had written in 2010, a page she had never shown anyone. Its title, "The Night They Tried to Brand Me." The words hit like a confession long buried. "It was like walking into a room," she had written, "where everyone had already decided what I was worth. I wasn't a person, I was a product, a body, an opportunity. I was expected to play along or disappear." Then came the prosecutor's voice. This time, quieter, but more haunting. "This," they said, "was never just about a party. This was an attempted initiation." And she ran before they could finish the script. The defense leapt up. Objection. Speculation. No direct misconduct alleged. The judge sustained. But the deposition remained. The courtroom leaned in. Then the prosecutor delivered a final truth. Not with force, but with finality. She didn't just leave the house. She left with knowledge. That's why they watched her for years. And according to AR's affidavit, that's also why, even today, Rihanna never attends a private event without legal staff present. Because she saw the list, she saw the lighting, and she never forgot what they tried to make her, the prosecutor. Moved slower this time. Like the weight of what came next needed space, needed silence to land. The courtroom watched as they introduced Exhibit 19D, an audio file submitted not for playback but for record. It came directly from Rihanna's legal team, and it had never been heard by the public. The tape, dated June 12, 2015, had been recovered during an unrelated breach of privacy case. It was a voicemail, one Rihanna never answered. She didn't recognize the number, but she saved the message anyway. The voice on the other end was calm, male, unlisted, American, and what he said cracked the quiet in half. "You left early once. Don't leave loud. Not everyone who stayed regretted it. Some of us thrived." Then came a second voice, muffled but clear. "Tell her to stop saying red. It's not her word." There was no mistaking it. This wasn't a reminder. It was a warning, dressed as memory. The judge ordered the full audio sealed, but the impact had already landed. The gallery didn't breathe. The story was no longer just unfolding. It was now bleeding through sealed doors. The prosecutor continued. Ms. Fenty never responded to that voicemail. But 6 days later, she wrote something in her journal. It was a single line, short, haunting, displayed now across the courtroom screen for every eye to see. "If I vanish, it started there. That room, that list, that scent." Then came Exhibit 19E, a private, sealed text message exchange between Rihanna and a well-known music producer, name redacted. The year was 2016. Rihanna had been invited to a tribute event tied to an industry reunion. She messaged the producer asking if it was safe to attend. He responded plainly, "If you're invited, it's not for your music. Just don't wear red. And don't say the word either. They'll think you're trying to call it out." The room didn't react. They couldn't. By now, everyone was connecting the threads. Zanaya's deposition, Cassie's testimony, red lighting, red room, red rules. And now, Rihanna, facing her own variation of the same color-coded threat. The prosecution didn't name the producer, but they confirmed he was on the federal witness list. Then came a letter, Exhibit 19F, a note Rihanna had handwritten on the back of a plane ticket. Not addressed, never mailed, found folded inside a makeup bag in storage, unearthed in 2022 by her own archival team. The message read, "I wasn't just scared, I was ashamed. Ashamed I got that close to the machine. Ashamed I didn't warn someone else." It was this letter, her lawyers said, that broke the silence. That pushed Rihanna to testify, even if just on paper, because she realized this wasn't just about her. "I used to think I escaped," she wrote, "but what if all I did was delay the next girl's turn?" The judge called for a 15-minute recess. No one moved, not the jury, not the gallery, because something had shifted. This wasn't just courtroom strategy anymore. This was a reckoning. Rihanna, a global icon the world saw as untouchable, had just revealed the only place she never felt safe: behind the scenes. The silence that followed wasn't out of respect. It was recognition. Recognition that her voice wasn't a performance, it was evidence. When the session resumed, the prosecution wasted no time. What came next would cut deeper than any tabloid, headline, or carefully worded press release. This was no longer about whispers. This was about proof. They introduced Exhibit 19G, a signed statement from a former celebrity stylist who had worked with Rihanna on multiple international tours. The document was labeled only with a year and a place. 2013, Milan. The stylist recalled a strange conversation during red carpet fittings. Out of nowhere, Rihanna had asked, "Have you ever heard of the list?" The stylist thought she meant paparazzi lists, maybe label rosters. But then she followed up with a different question. "What does it mean if your name has a star next to it?" He didn't know how to respond. But that night, while pulling wardrobe options from a BOA shared fashion house email thread, he stumbled upon a file. It wasn't addressed to him, but it was open. The subject line, "Event re-entry confirmed. Assets, star tier." And there it was. Her name, Fenty, marked with 3 stars. He closed the email, never spoke of it. But when Rihanna canceled her appearance, at the last minute, no explanation, no warning, he understood why. His affidavit closed with one chilling sentence. "I don't know what it meant." But it wasn't fashion, and it wasn't music. Then came Exhibit 19H, a photograph, not of a person, of a box. The image had been taken in 2020 at a luxury hotel in London where Rihanna was staying during a Fenty Skin promotional shoot. The box was unmarked. Inside, a mirror, a red candle, a single black velvet glove. No note, no signature, just a printed tag that read, "Would have looked better on you the first time." By the time hotel staff filed a report, the box was already gone. Rihanna didn't post about it, didn't speak about it. But that night, she requested an immediate hotel switch and canceled all appearances for the next 48 hours. Then came the most private of revelations. Exhibit 19I. A voice memo, recorded by Rihanna in 2021, submitted confidentially to her legal team. In it, she says, "People think the worst thing that happened to me was in front of cameras, but it wasn't. The worst thing was that room, that list, that smell, and knowing I wasn't invited for my voice." Her voice faltered. Then she added, "They didn't want me gone. They wanted me rewritten, and I refused." The room didn't gasp. It just listened. Because by now everyone understood this wasn't an isolated incident. It was a system. Rihanna hadn't just escaped a party. She had survived a script written without her consent, and they had been trying to rewrite her ever since. What came next wasn't a voicemail. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't even a threat. It was a calendar, handwritten, personal, recovered from a backup wardrobe trailer during Rihanna's anti-tour rehearsals in early 2016. It was labeled simply, "Track days, blackout days, internal only." This was Exhibit 19J, a document that shouldn't have mattered, until it did. The calendar laid out her rehearsal schedule, fittings, stage plotting, but then there were marks, red circles, small X's beside them. When asked in court what those red X's meant, Rihanna's tour manager answered plainly, Those weren't our markings. I didn't write them, neither did she. The gallery leaned in, and then came the moment no one could explain away. On one of those Red X days, April 3rd, 2016, Rihanna was approached backstage by a man no one recognized. He wasn't on the staff list, wasn't security, but he wore a Bad Boy Records credential around his neck. She asked who he was. He answered, "I'm just here to check the lighting. You've got a special guest window coming up." When she pressed further, he walked away, disappeared into the loading dock. No one could trace the credential. Security never found him. But the next morning, Exhibit 19K was logged, a backstage incident report. No theft, but the staging had been tampered with. A backup mic was unplugged, one of the floor lights, repositioned to hit her directly during a specific cue, a cue drenched in red light, the same red that kept returning, the same red that was no longer just a color, but a language only survivors seemed to recognize. Rihanna's internal team logged one chilling note. Robin requested the red light sequence be removed, replaced with cool tones. No more red spots? Then came a voice memo. Exhibit 19L. Private. Unsent. Rihanna had recorded it the same night. The tone was not angry, it was tired. Hollow. "Somebody still has access," she said. "Someone who thinks I'm still in the ITI system. I'm not. I left. Why do they keep trying to remind me what I walked away from?" Then silence. The kind that doesn't end with a sigh. The kind that just lingers like fog after something ancient has stirred. The prosecutor didn't raise their voice. They didn't need to. They turned to the jury and said one sentence that turned the room to stone. "This isn't about fame. It isn't about music. It's about a system of people who believe that once you step through their door, you belong to them forever." Rihanna didn't just walk away from a house, she walked away from the machine. But the machine never stopped following her. And now, the courtroom wasn't reacting anymore. It was remembering. Because every new exhibit wasn't just a clue, it was a pattern. The prosecutor stepped forward once more, this time holding a transcript. Not from a court hearing, not from a deposition, but from a phone call, one that had never been intended for courtroom. Years. Exhibit 19M was a redacted transcript of a private conversation between Rihanna and an unnamed female artist. The date, July 2020. The call had been submitted voluntarily by Rihanna's legal team. The heading read, "I had to try one more time." The artist's name was blacked out, but the court confirmed she had once been part of Diddy's mentorship roster. A woman who hadn't released music in over a decade, someone who had simply disappeared. Rihanna's follow-up affidavit added context. It had taken weeks to get her number. When she finally answered, the first thing she said was, "Don't use my name. Not even now." The transcript read like a final warning exchanged between two survivors who never got to grieve. Rihanna: "You were there too, weren't you?" Unknown: "Yes." Rihanna: "Why didn't you ever say anything?" Unknown: "Because I didn't leave." That silence cracked something deep inside the room, but it was the next line that made the judge sit back in his chair. Unknown: "I gave up the first time. You didn't. That's why they kept trying to get you back." The prosecution placed the transcript down and moved to Exhibit 19N, a production email from a major global streaming platform. The subject line referenced Rihanna's 2021 Fenty documentary. According to the email, an entire segment had been removed before final cut. The segment's title, "Industry Control: The Cost of Saying No." It was Rihanna's idea. She had recorded it herself. In it, she had described how fame felt less like a gift and more like a leash, how the higher she climbed, the tighter the grip became. But just days before release, she was told that footage would be disruptive to brand identity. In her deposition, Rihanna's response was simple. "I didn't argue. I told them to cut it, because I knew it wasn't about my brand, it was about theirs." The final exhibit in the segment was 19O, a contract, a licensing deal. One of the largest ever offered to a female artist by a global fashion house. It had one clause buried in the fine print. All public commentary regarding past industry experiences, especially those involving private events or mentorship frameworks, must be reviewed, cleared, and mutually approved prior to release. Rihanna's "I'll be spake" response? "That's not business, that's ownership." She declined the deal, walked away, Not because she couldn't take it, but because she refused to be handled. And in that moment, it was clear. She hadn't just been resisting a machine. She had been rejecting a legacy of silent compliance wrapped in luxury. The binder shut with a soft thud, but the moment didn't end. The prosecutor didn't raise their voice. They didn't have to. The gallery was already frozen, not from shock anymore, but from recognition. This wasn't just about Rihanna. This wasn't just about red lights, voicemails, or silence. This was about the quiet war waged behind every stage curtain. A war where survival required more than strength. It required surrender, silence, or absolute refusal. And Rihanna had chosen refusal. The prosecution returned with one final binder. It wasn't thick, it didn't need to be. Just a few pages, a few names, a final moment that would confirm everything. The prosecutor leaned into the mic and said, "This is the moment she stopped running. Exhibit 19P was a canceled appearance slip. It belonged to an ultra-private industry gala held in late 2022. No media, no press, no phones. The event was sponsored by Combs Global. The theme, legacy, loyalty, luxury. Rihanna had been listed as the headlining guest, not to perform, but to be honored. A surprise tribute, a brand presentation, a celebration dressed in elegance and influence. She never confirmed her appearance, yet her name appeared on the official printed run of show. That document was leaked by a former production assistant. The night before the event, Rihanna's team sent a withdrawal notice. No explanation. But internally, she had said something that revealed the entire truth. If I walk into that room, it's not networking. It's surrender. That same night, during a Fenty rehearsal shoot in Paris, a man appeared backstage. No one knew who he was. He didn't speak. He didn't threaten. He simply handed a black box to a stagehand and vanished. No badge, no photo, no trace. Inside the box, a red scarf, a pair of designer sunglasses, and a card. The card said, "Unfinished business. Room still waiting." That was Exhibit 19Q, a photo of the contents, presented without commentary, because none was needed. Everyone already understood which room the message referred to. The room with the red light, the room that demanded silence, the room that never really let go. Then came Exhibit 19R, a voice memo. Rihanna recorded it 1 month later. Not for court, not for release, just for herself. In it, her voice was low, almost whispering. She said, "I thought if I worked hard enough, I could outrun it. The smell, the silence, the feeling that they'd always come back for you eventually." Then she paused, and what she said next broke the silence open. Then Cassie spoke, and I realized I wasn't the only one who left early. She paused again, and then, barely audible, she added, "Cassie opened the door. I'm making sure it stays open." That's when she contacted her lawyers. That's when she requested to give a sealed deposition. That's when she decided that staying quiet wasn't safety anymore. It was surrender. The prosecutor folded the binders shut. For the first time that day, the judge leaned forward, not to interrupt, but to acknowledge. His voice was clear, his words deliberate. "The witness has been heard." Then came the instruction. "Let the record reflect. Ms. Fenty's voice will remain on file." No verdict, no applause, just a silence that carried more weight than any gavel. Because some voices don't need a podium, a press tour, or a tell-all memoir. They don't need to trend, they just need to be believed. The final document entered. Wasn't labeled. It wasn't an exhibit. It wasn't even official. It was a scanned page, torn, folded, weathered. A piece of Rihanna's private journal. Her legal team had insisted it be included. There was no date, no signature, just 5 words scribbled at the top of the page. "If you're reading this," the court clerk read it aloud, line by line. "I didn't want to be remembered for leaving. I wanted to be remembered for refusing to stay." Then she described the years after that night in 2009. The red room, the clipboard, the invitation that wasn't really an invitation. "I tried to bury it under work, under fame, under fragrance launches and world tours. But it always came back. In the lighting cues, in the NDAs, in the unexpected emails, in the gifts left in hotel rooms." Then came the part that had been blacked out, crossed through in thick ink. But underneath, written again, clearer, more certain, crossed out, "I was scared of what they'd do to me." rewritten. I was scared of what I'd become if I kept letting them. And then, the final line. The one that didn't just conclude the journal, it concluded everything. I didn't get out untouched. I got out with the door still open. For the next girl who needs to run. There were no further questions. The transcript ends there. No closing statement, no final commentary, just a clerk's final note. Witness has concluded. Jury instructed to reflect on the nature of silence, not just what is spoken. And that's where Rihanna's story truly landed. Not in headlines, not in hashtags, but in the quiet space that follows truth. Because she never stood in front of cameras, never named names on a morning show, never broke down on a podcast. She waited for the moment when silence became more dangerous than truth. And now, the door is open.